Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. Today's special guest is Sal Abbinanti. He's the art dealer for legendary artists like Alex Ross. He's also the creator of Atomika. He now has an active Kickstarter campaign for Atomika, the Red Omnibus. Now join me as we go Traversing the Stars. Hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining Traversing the Stars podcast.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
It's good. It's good. You know, we're trudging along. It's going well.
Well, a question I always like to ask all my guests, especially the comic book guests going forward is, when did you first fall in love with comic books?
Right away. I mean, back in the drugstores when they had the spinner racks, and I knew right from the get-go, man. Right when I saw Thor 206, John Buscema, I knew that just spoke to me. I was like, it was bitten by a vampire.
Well, in the background, I don't know if in the audio version, the listeners may not be able to see it, but okay. In the visual version, the video one, you have a kick-ass spinner rack in the background. I'm very in awe of that.
Yeah, I found it at a garage sale about 10, 12 years ago. Guy was throwing it out. So.
Now, are those regular issues, or are they reprints, or are those the real comics?
No, those are old comics. I wanted it to kind of represent the stuff that was out when I was a kid. That when Marvel used to have those great titles and the great logos, and the art was below where the comic fit in. It was kind of the banded it. I think it was called banding. So it just kind of, it's good to surround yourself with stuff that reminds you of those pieces of your life when things weren't so complicated. And, so for me, it was always that and black light posters, the Marvel black light posters. I had in my bedroom. I was a big fan of.
Well, as a fellow comic book nerd, I'm in awe of your spinner rack. It's very badass, and that's a great setup for your comic books.
Thank you. They're out there. They're just harder and harder to find because I think a lot of people threw them out. And when comics used to be available anywhere, when the stores got rid of them, they literally threw them away. So
see, with me, I have my vanity wall behind me. That's where I put my comic books with stick on which are going to destroy the wall at some point.
we all got our, this is nice, but it's down in my office. My wife is like, yeah, keep it down in your office.
Well, I also read that you're a big fan of Jack Kirby. Is that correct? And what is about Jack Kirby that you just love and inspires you?
Well, I was not it's funny because I wasn't originally a big Kirby guy. As a kid, I loved Buscema and John Romita and Gene Colan and the way Joe Sinnott finished things and made everything looked, especially over John Buscema's work. And Kirby, I kind of thought was ugly, it kind of scared me a little bit. And then as I got a little bit older, I discovered New Gods strictly by accident, and it kind of changed the course of what I wanted to do, in terms of comics, because I just felt that what I got most from Kirby is it's supposed to be a product of your imagination, and if he drew a toaster, it was 2 pages long. and it just, I don't know. There was something about Kirby. He was almost like Hendrix, where you don't get it until you get it. And then once you get it, you can't unsee it. And then after New Gods, it's weird because Kirby had already done a ton of stuff at Marvel, but I discovered Kirby at DC first, and then went back and saw all the great stuff he was doing at Marvel. Cause I was really just intrigued by the Demon and New Gods and Commandy and Mr. Miracle and all the Fourth World stuff. And then, you remember he came back to Marvel in the 70s, but for me, that wasn't, he started doing a lot of covers and things, and Cap, his run on Cap. But I was always, and then I just ran back and jumped on everything he did. And he's still like, I believe he's one of the greatest artists of the 20th century.
I would totally agree. I mean, everything about Jack Kirby, especially when you get to the New Gods, is just larger than life. I mean, he can make anything look simple and just give it scope and power and gravitas. And I would definitely say his run of the New Gods is, that's a legendary run, and it's powerful in just the scope and the level of, you're working on a godlike level, which we're going to get to with Atomika as well, which I can kind of see a straight through line from what Jack Kirby was doing with his, almost space mythology and what you have going with Atomica.
Mhm. Yeah, it was inspiring because it was kind of like, like with Commandy, you knew when every page 2 and 3 was going to be a double page spread. And even his treasury stuff that he did, even with like 2001 Space Odyssey, which people would think, my God, why would you make a comic out of a Stanley Kubrick movie? How is it possible? But with Kirby, everything with the double page spreads and his over the top grandeur, and everything was very theatrical,
I,
inspired me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I completely agree with that. He really is one of the greats, and I don't know if modern readers, the younger readers, appreciate what Kirby brought to the table when you look at his work. When you look at his work, like I said, in the Eternals as well. I mean, it was just amazing what he was doing.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And also, you're also an art dealer with other legendary artists as well. You're art dealer for Alex Ross and Bill Sienkiewicz. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sienkiewicz, yeah.
Sienkiewicz.
Yeah, I started, I wanted, I started out as, I was a storyboard artist at Leo Burnett, and I met Alex we knew some of the same people at Leo Burnett, or we'd worked at different parts of Leo Burnett at different times, and then we became friends. And I was trying to get in the comic business. It just wasn't happening. My style was just not what they were looking for. And so we talked about, working together. He asked if I could kind of help him out a little, and we started working together. And then that was 20 years ago.
I mean, yeah, those are two people who are, once again, also just legends in the industry.
Bill, I approached, we had people we knew, and then I was always such an enormous fan of Bill's work that I wanted to meet him. So a friend of mine knew him, said, yeah, I'll introduce you to him. So we started talking, and then he found out that I worked with Alex, and then one thing led to another, and then I started working with him, and that was about 13 years ago. Oh, wow. Around there. Yeah, so it's been a while. There's a tremendous a lot to learn from both of those guys. So
now, would you say that your time with working with, like, say, with Alex Ross, who once again is noted for those unbelievable, almost photoreal comic books, and obviously Bill as well, how does that influence you as an artist as well?
The level of professionalism, what they bring to the table. It kind of set the bar real high in terms of you see what they do, and you realize, you got to bring your A game and your chops, but yet we could always have, conversations about whatever, composition and color and art, and show them your work, show each other our work, and get a lot of feedback, direct feedback of something if they don't understand it, or if they this, or, hey, there's a little more clarity there. But I think just an overall kind of vibe of professionalism that you get when you start working with those two guys.
Would you say that professionalism goes a long way to, and almost is more important than the raw talent, that if you have the talent but without the professionalism, you will not be successful?
It doesn't hurt. I mean, talent doesn't hurt. I think if you're a really talented guy, you're always going to find work. But the minute that you're working with a publisher and you start to miss deadlines or have problems with deadlines, then they don't care. They're gonna find somebody else, because they'll take somebody who's half as talented as you, who meets deadlines, versus somebody who's a pain in the ass who just doesn't meet deadlines, because they're going to wind up losing money. Once you solicit a book, you're on the clock to deliver that book, and if you don't deliver it, there's no returns anymore. I mean, and if you do it a couple of times, Diamond will just, you're the people who you're soliciting your book with will just stop working with you. So you gotta kind of know that going in. I mean, Alex always and Bill always had commercial backgrounds, and you learn when you work at commercial art that they really don't want to know your problems. They don't really care why it's late. It's late. And if it's late, then you're probably not going to get a call again. So it's better just to be straightforward. If you can't take something, just don't take it. But it has become a problem. I've known artists, some really good artists, who are not great, but yet they get a ton of work because they are absolutely, slaves to the deadline. They meet that deadline. They don't miss the deadlines.
I mean, that seems to be also another through line going back from Kirby, because Kirby was also noted as being an exceptional hard worker and
Oh
dedicated
no,
artist.
Kirby's a bad example because Kirby
Really?
used to do like 5 to 6 issues a month.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's superhuman. I mean, nobody can do that. I mean, nobody. I defy anyone to do. I mean, to get someone to do 22 pages a month is the norm now. That's considered the benchmark.
Mm.
Kirby did 5 issues a month when he was doing the Fourth World, 4 to 5. Sometimes when he was doing Sandman, he even did 6 books a month. I mean, that's impossible, and nobody will ever, reach that kind of level. I mean, it's like how he did that. I have no idea. 22 pages times 5. I mean, that's
Right. Well, even the comic books back then as well were even thicker than the ones now. I mean, back then they would be what, 28, probably almost 32.
Probably, yeah. And he was writing some of those too. So
Yeah.
that's superhuman. That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you yourself is an exceptional artist. And as we said, you're the artist and creator of a fantastic series called Atomika, which was what inspired the creation of Atomika.
I couldn't get in the comic business. My style was just, it was eclectic. It wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't a house style. So, the desktop publishing business was changing a lot. You could publish a book in the 90s, in the late 90s, differently than you did in the early 90s. And then once we got into, after Y2K, we got into the, desktop publishing. It changed tremendously with the scanner and with printers that you could go to and print 100 copies, 50 copies. Whereas earlier you needed to have a print run of say 25,000 and up, or they wouldn't touch you. And if you wanted to do color, it was 5 times more expensive than if you did black and white. So you really, a lot of people were only doing black and white in the late 90s, or in the mid to late 90s, because it was just too expensive to do color. So I just decided, hey, I had done all the portfolio lines. I had met with all the editors. I talked with everybody, and they kept telling me, oh, we love it, but we can't use it. And then after you hear that about 50 times, you think, okay, look, I get it. Look, say what you want, but I'm not getting hired. And they won't even give me, I was doing spec work, proposals. I mean, Swamp Thing and Luke Cage, and I did the Atom, I did Conan, I did everything I could, and it wasn't happening. So I finally said, look, you got to put your money where your mouth is. And a lot of guys were doing self-publishing in those days. The Image guys had broke off and created Image and were doing their thing. So, he just said, hey, if you really believe in yourself enough, I think it's important to just say, let's do it. I wanted to go in the front door. You want that validation that, hey, the comic industry wants you. But hey, if it doesn't work out, half a loaf of bread is better than no bread at all.
I find that amazing because having read the Atomika comic books, the art really is beautiful looking. I mean, it's a beautiful looking book. I can't imagine anyone from the B2 not being, attracted to what you've been doing with these books.
I get it. I mean, I understand it, because if you look at a house style, you look at the house style of Marvel and DC, it is not what I do. And editors always claim to want what's new, but yet when you bring them something that's different or doesn't look like everything else, it scares them, and they don't want that. They want something that looks like what they're used to because it's safer. And I understood it. It didn't make it any easier, but in some ways it kind of galvanizes your, as an artist, you really don't have a choice. You really have to be an artist or you don't. And I didn't have a choice. I knew I had to be an artist, and I was willing to do everything else I could on the side to kind of supplement being an artist. Because when you say you're going to be an indie publisher, start at the beginning. You're not going to make a lot of money. If you think being an indie publisher means you're going to be Howard Hughes and you're going to, be independently wealthy and it's not happening. It's like opening an independent theater, or being an indie writer or an indie filmmaker or whatever. To me, it's all the same artistically. It's that creative outlet. You better get ready to just, I was everything. I was a bartender. I was a landscaper. I was a roofer. I did everything to kind of supplement being an artist. Working with Bill and Alex provided me a tremendous upside to be able to be in the comic business, but yet still do my work on the side. And it continues to this day. I continue to put books out, but I still work with Bill and Alex because as an indie publisher, again, you're not going to be little Art Fauntleroy and have a cigarette holder and walk around. And,
I hear that so much. It's like I said, you can see behind me, those are all my creator-owned books for my indie publisher, Vector Comics, and I do another one for 123 Go. And yeah, the profits don't come easy. You're scraping for your every dollar, and
look, that's why I tell people you got to want to do it. You got to want to be an artist. You got to want to be an indie publisher, because you're going to have a lot of reasons not to do it. You're going to get a lot of rejection, but rejection is important. Rejection gives you experience, and experience gives you kind of enough to know what you don't know. And you should always look back at your work a year or two. If you would look back at something you did a year or two ago and you don't think it sucks and think you've gotten a lot better, then you're doing something wrong. You're not getting better. You're not evolving. So, but as an indie publisher or an indie creator, you at least you shuffle the deck. You change the dynamic where you're not sitting around waiting for permission to work. You're not waiting for an editor to go, okay, go ahead. You're saying, screw that. I mean, if you don't want me at your party, I'll throw my own party.
I agree with you that 100%. Like I said, the reason I do my comic books, well, there's multiple reasons. Obviously, DC and Marvel aren't asking me for any work. But I do my own. I mean, for a lot of reasons, it's I can write what I want now. There's no one can tell me I didn't write the character the way they wanted. It's my character, my way, and that is something to be said that at least that way, the only person you can blame if it doesn't work is yourself.
And you learn a lot. You learn a lot. I mean, the biggest critics are people that never put out their own stuff. Whenever people criticize you, I say, okay, that's cool. I mean, I love constructive criticism, especially as an indie publisher. You're going to get it. But I say, okay, where's your book? Where's your time? And then you see how they shut up quick, because you learn that it's not as easy as it looks. There's a million things that are landmines that are going to hit you when you say you want to be an indie publisher, which is, money, talent, finding people, working with people, deadlines, getting the work done, putting your ass on the line, it's your work, which means that you can't blame, you don't have any excuses, and you can't blame anybody. I mean, there's parts of your work you're going to always look back on and go, man, I wish I would have done it differently. But that's okay, because that's who you were then. That's not who you are now. That's who you were then. And you learn a lot by doing it yourself. And there's a certain amount of gravitas of being able to have the balls to do it yourself, because a lot of times as an artist, fear will stop you. Fear will freeze you from doing it because you're afraid of showing your work. Being an artist is cool when you got your own work and you're showing your family or your friends. The minute you say you break out of that comfort zone and you got to show people in the industry and listen to their feedback, and then it's a different story.
I agree with you 100%. And like I said, that's one of the things about Atomika. I think it definitely feels like something unique into itself. It's something that feels like it must come from an independent voice, because you could never see DC or Marvel publishing that story, but it feels a story that needed to be told. And I think I really do think it was a beautiful comic book. Can you give our listeners your pitch for Atomika?
I growing up in the 70s, Atomika, the Soviet Union was always the evil empire. They were, and I just always felt it was a cool setting for a book. And I thought it would be a tremendous opportunity creatively to kind of channel my love for Kirby and my independent mindset of my work. And so I started to explore into it more and more, and into the Soviet Union and kind of the culture we live in now, where technology has become our God, our phones and our computer and everything. Religion isn't what I grew up in a big Italian Catholic family, but religion isn't what it was when I was a kid. And so I thought, as I started to explore the Soviet Union, I realized they have their own mythology over there, the way there's Greek mythology. And the Soviet Union told their people, the state is your religion. There is no more religion. Religion is counterproductive to the state. So they literally created their own God, which was the Soviet Union. So I kind of used Atomika as a metaphor for the god of the 20th century. He's Mother Russia's second son.
Mm.
First son is the revolution, or second son is technology. So he represents that technology. It's not religious, it's not political, because I get hate mail, calling me comrade, and why don't I go back to Russia, which I've never been to Russia. It's a comic book, guys. It's a cool setting for a book, is what I thought. So now that he's the new god, the mythological gods of Russia are now dying. So he's battling the mythological gods of Russia, to be the god of Russia. So it's kind of his journey throughout Russia, battling different gods.
And I think it's a wonderful concept. And I think what I found fascinating, as someone who was apparently not versed at all in Russian mythology, I didn't realize they had their own mythology. Like I said, I know Greek, I know Egyptian.
No, a lot. They've got a lot. I mean, because you got to, Russia's a huge country. So they've got like 13 time zones in Russia. That's how big it is. And so they've got a lot of mythological gods based on folk tales, based on spirits, farmers. It's a very rural part, very rural parts of the country that have a lot of these smaller gods, these smaller spirits, these saints, these things that are based off of lots and lots of stories passed down, throughout, the centuries. And so they have, like the Greeks, or like the Egyptians or every other culture, they've got a tremendous mythology of these really cool characters.
Yeah, and Atomika is a 12 issue series, or was a 12 issue series that was published through Speakeasy Comics and ended in the year 2011, correct?
Yeah, I started with Speakeasy, but it didn't last very long because it was just, they were a couple of issues. And then when they spelled my name wrong in the ad a couple of times, I decided to start Mercury Comics, which is basically just my kitchen table. And I published it myself. And it was always meant to be a story, just a self kind of 12 issues. It was meant to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It wasn't meant to be a character that went on forever. And so I worked with Andrew Dabb, who's a tremendous writer, and we plotted it together. And then he wrote this great script, which is kind of this haunting, kind of poetic script that he wrote. And it was just meant to go 12 issues. We were going to do an annual, and we may still do an annual called USSA, which is how, the Soviet Union beat the US in this Cold War, kind of hypothetical thing, but it just never happened, because when I put the book out, you got to kind of be realistic. My numbers were good, but they weren't great. And then it started to come out inconsistently at the end, because comic stores aren't always quick to grab indie titles. It's tough to get comic stores to buy indie titles. So that's why I'd always kind of dreamed, so to speak, of putting an omnibus together, but I wasn't sure that there was enough traction where people would want it as an omnibus, because at the time, you did it the old way. You printed it and then you sold it. And then it's like, well, great, but now what am I going to do when they drop a pallet of books in my living room of hardcovers? I got to figure out how I'm going to sell them and not have my wife use them to hold the garage door open. So that's where the crowdfunding came in. And I thought it's a terrific opportunity. And I'm ecstatic at the idea that enough people really liked it to where we're funded to have the hardcover made.
Well, as you said, the omnibus of Atomika is what's on Kickstarter right now. And for those listeners, and I'll say this from experience, the Atomika comic books, as looking through and trying to buy them online, there are a lot of they're hard to find. I mean, they've been sold out. The omnibus is the best way to get the full series now. If you don't have, if you're missing an issue, you're going to have to go to the omnibus. Like I said, a lot of stores apparently have sold out some years back. Because I looked for them, I couldn't find them.
The weird thing about Atomika was there was a lot of material that I had that I'd acquired, because at the time I was doing a lot of cons. So I hit up a lot of artists, some, that were my heroes and guys I really liked, and some friends of mine to do pieces, because I wanted to create this kind of history for the character. And as the issues came out, some of the stuff I was getting after the book was already published. So I had some material that was never seen before. So with the omnibus, there's things in there that were never published before. The Darwin Cook piece, Darwin did a great piece for me. Ernie Chan did some stuff. Alex Nino. So there's a lot of art and supplemental material in the omnibus. It's over 300 pages that was not in any of the individual issues. So there's a lot there.
And I think one thing I love about Atomica is that in reading the series, it feels like the story has history, because some comic books feel like they exist just in the moment in which you read them. The story exists in that moment. Atomica feels like it's something that has a history around it, that it's just, you're just being one moment of that longer history. It feels like it has a very rich story behind it. And I think that's fantastic. That's one of the benefits of that series.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on in terms of, it was important for me to get covers and back covers and pinups and inside back covers. So, because I wanted, I approached every artist to say, look, this is the character. This is what it is. I'm not going to art direct you. Whatever you come to the table with, that's what I want to see, because I wanted to see other artists' interpretation of the character, so that people can get more of a kind of bring to the, they bring to the book what they see, and then other readers can kind of get out of it what they see out of it, and not just my interpretation. So, if you look through it, I mean, there's plenty of material on the Kickstarter page for you to kind of see, the first issues there, and a lot of covers and a lot of images for you to kind of, feel out whether it's your type of thing or not.
And so one question I had about the character of the Atomica character. So he's an immensely powerful character, and he's a creation of the Russian scientist. And as a writer, when you're envisioning his creation, or the artist, as you created the character, I know Andrew Dabb did a lot of the writing. What would you say was the character's tragic flaw, and also what do you think draws the reader to this character, who obviously exists at a level where obviously we none of us will be at the god level as Atomica? So how do audiences identify with him?
Well, when I created him, I had designed a lot of different ideas of what I wanted him to look like, but at the end of the day, I just came back to the fact that he's a god, or he's a self-made god. They kind of forged him. He's a metaphor for technology. So I went back to the Renaissance, which, Michelangelo and Da Vinci, those guys were huge influences on me. And when you see the Renaissance paintings, most of the gods and the biblical figures are naked because of their vanity. So that's why every time I designed this Soviet character, he only looked like an American guy he looked like a Soviet guy designed by an American comic book guy. So he kept looking like an American comic book. And I kept going, no, he needs to look Russian. He needs to, and he's a god. So I said, all right, I'll make him naked, and I'll wrap him in the Soviet flag, like, the Kids Are All Right album cover from The Who, where they're sitting there and they're wrapped in the Union Jack. And I put that around him. And I originally wanted him naked, but then, I thought, I can't have him naked on the cover or anywhere else, even though Simon Bisley and a couple artists wanted to make him fully naked. I mean, like, everything's showing. I said, I can't, because we'll run into problems. But his flaw is just hubris. He's a vain guy. There's a lot of, the power goes to his head, and he thinks he could solve all of their, every man's problems, but he, discover that it's like technology isn't going to solve all our problems. That it's just our phones and everything else that we think is going to, with today's technology, we think we're invincible, and we're not.
Well, I mean, it's a beautifully realized character, and it's killing it on Kickstarter. Last I checked, you guys already blew past the pledge limit that you needed, and moved on to stretch goals.
Goals. Yeah.
At this point, I mean, it's been like I said, it's doing extremely well online on the Kickstarter, which listeners will put on the link to it underneath the interview as well, so our listeners can pledge as well.
Thank you.
Oh yes, definitely my pleasure. So what is the key to creating a great Kickstarter? Like I said, yours is doing exceedingly well.
You have to start at the beginning. You have to worry about order fulfillment. Should be your first order of business, how you're going to deliver the product, because people on Kickstarter, you have to gain their trust. And a lot of people have supported Kickstarter campaigns only to be burned, or only to feel like they didn't get what they set out for. So people are kind of leery going in of, hey, okay, who is this? What am I getting involved with? Who are these guys? How am I going to get order fulfillment? Answering your feedback. What I love most about crowdfunding is indie supporters are not like regular comic buyers. Regular comic buyers go in and it's like there's a lot of brand loyalty there. They go in and they know their characters and that's what they buy. And that's cool. But indie buyers, it's a different beast. They like to try different things. They like to have they like to have a one-on-one with the creator and tell them when something sucks or when they didn't get something they were promised, or, hey, I like this, but I don't like that. So answer your feedback immediately. But start at the beginning, have a cool page and show the book, show what you're selling. Don't make promises, show it. I mean, I love to support indie books when I'm on Kickstarter, but nothing disappoints me more than when I go on there and I want to look at the art or examples of the art and it's not there. And that tells me one thing, that tells me that the project isn't done. That tells me that they're waiting for the money to do the work. And sweat equity is 99% of a book. I mean, you're an indie guy, you know how it goes. It's all about the work. Don't wait for the Kickstarter campaign to be over to actually finish the book, because you know what happens. Inevitably, life happens. Things happen. You lose a job. Your girlfriend walks out. Your dog dies. People don't want to hear your bullshit. They don't care. They're like, hey man, I funded your book back in March. Where the hell is it? And now you're going to go on and on with your, oh my God, the sky fell and Galactus hit my house. Nobody gives a shit. So finish the book before you even think about doing a Kickstarter campaign, because people want to see that. Do some color image. And I mean, by finished, I mean everything, the lettering, the coloring, the finished, the book itself. Get your, go to your printers, get your, find out what it's going to cost, have an idea, set a realistic goal. Don't say, hey, I want to get as much as I possibly can. When we set a goal for how much we wanted, it was how much to get it made, period. Stretch goals are terrific. People love stretch goals, but that should not be your goal. I mean, my last Kickstarter campaign was The Hostage and it did really well. And I put all of that into Atomika because I wanted to, so badly have it work. I didn't assume anything was going to work, but be straightforward, be honest, put as much information as you can on your Kickstarter page. And don't bullshit. Don't make it a dream, make it's your objective to get this book done, because there's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great books on Kickstarter. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on there that you look at and you go, wow, and take examples from the best pages. And also take advantages from the shit, go to shitty Kickstarter campaigns and go, what are they doing wrong? Why is this bad? And it's usually bad because they haven't planned. Before I did Word One, I went out and I reached out to a couple of people who did successful campaigns. I reached out to Jimmy Palmiotti. I reached out to Aspen Comics. I reached out to a few people. I said, hey guys, do me a favor. Let me pick your brain. Tell me what you did right. Tell me what you did wrong. What do I need to do? I didn't know anything about stretch goals. No clue that people love that stuff. Stickers, bookmarks, sketchbooks, extra stuff, because that's kind of what gives the project real flavors. People love to open a box and there's the book, but also they're getting all kinds of extra free stuff, which kind of gives the brand a lot more flavor than just going, okay, here's your book. That's cool, but there's not a lot of charm to that. There's not a lot of, people love extra shit. You go to a party, I mean, you want like all the free stuff. When I'm at a trade show, when I'm at a con, people love all that tchotchke stuff, the pins, the coins, the stickers. I know I do. I mean, I love, who doesn't like stickers? I mean, you put them on your notebook, like when you're in high school.
Yeah.
And bookmarks and postcards. We did a trading card set. We did a lithograph set with, Alex and Sienkiewicz and different people. So plan it out, man. Don't be in a hurry until you're ready. Don't launch it. And then when you do launch it, get ready to get your ass kicked and do a lot of work and do a lot of banging the drum. I mean, a lot of social media and a lot of Facebook and a lot of updates. Social media is nice, but it's not as important as giving your supporters updates. Where are you? And then once it's done, give them updates on where you're at. Hey guys, we ran into a little bit of a snag with the printer because of COVID or this, but we're on this. This is when we expect it. We're really sorry. If it's going to be a little bit late, tell them it's going to be late. Don't bullshit them and then play stupid, because the next book you do, the next project you want to do, those supporters are going to move on. They're going to say, no, man, you know, you went against your word last time.
And I agree with you completely. About 6 months ago, I did a Kickstarter. Luckily I was successful with Malik #2. It's back there. It's the one over there, in the corner with the purple thing in the cover. You can't see it quite from there. And yeah, and I would say we hit our goal and we did well at the goal. But where we didn't do well, and I didn't think about it, and I think you're right on, stretch goals. I did not have a good plan for stretch goals after the initial goal was hit. And I think that's great advice, which is have that stuff set up. People do like it. I think that's perfect advice for future Kickstarters.
That's
campaigns.
okay. I mean, that's okay. You're going to learn from each. I mean, you're going to learn each time. And you're going to do better. And like I said, always, you know, look around and don't be afraid to ask. You know, I was like, I didn't know anything about Kickstarter, and I had never done a Kickstarter, nor was I going to do one. And then when COVID hit, it forced all independent publishers to pivot. You know, we had to find a new way to get our, you know, because cons were gone. I used to be a creature of doing trade shows. I love to do cons. You do Artist Alley and you can get direct feedback from people and from people that like indie comics. That was gone. But there's more to it than that. What I loved about Kickstarter was you can make a video, you can show your product. People can explore your product a lot more than if you just put an ad in Diamond, or if you just put an ad, you know, that shows up on the internet. That's important, but people like to look and see through, you know, what you're doing and what the book is and what the pencils look like. Oh, okay, what's the story about? Oh, okay, maybe there's an extra cover there, or, you know, stretch goal stuff. That's the next step. But the first step was just to be able to and make a video. Don't make it too long. Don't. There's nothing worse than guys that make 5-minute videos and get on there and talk about themselves for 5. Nobody gives a shit. Get to it, man. It's got to be like a cheap porno movie. Just get right to it, man. You know, start naked. Just under 2 minutes for sure. I mean, because there's nothing worse than, because inevitably when I sponsor a Kickstarter campaign, I want to see the art. I want to see the product. That I don't give a shit about the guy sitting in his house talking about, you know, why nobody cares about why I'm an artist. They only want to go, show me the art. Nope, it's not for me. Or, hey, this is cool. I like it. And then let me think about it. You know, when people back out or they cancel out, thank them. Thank them for giving it a shot and supporting. You don't always know why people drop their pledges, because sometimes people drop pledges. You know, you'll see your number go up and down. You know, you don't know the whole story. People sometimes jump on, pledge, and then something happens and they have to back out. That's okay, man. That's part of being an indie publisher. You know?
Yeah. And your Red Omnibus of Atomika has some great additions. I mean, the pinups, you have pinups by Eric Powell, Darwin Cook, Steve Rude, Glenn Faber. I mean, that's an amazing level of talent involved in these pinups. How did you make this happen?
Well, first of all, if you need 20 pinups, you got to approach 50 guys, because a lot of them are not going to be available, or some of them they're not going to really say no. They're just going to say, hey man, I can't, I'm busy, or my schedule. Plan way ahead of time. You know, if you need them a year from now, start asking now, you know, because it's going to take some time. And then be honest, say, look, this is how much money I got. You know, but don't ask for free, because free, unless they're a friend of yours, you know, they're just going to say, oh man, hey, I'd love to help you out. I can't. And then you're going to get stuck. Just say, look, man, this is what I can afford. Or how about we do this? Or how about we swap? I'll do one for you. You do one for me. And don't be shy. Hit them up. You'd be amazed on what creators like to do stuff. There were some guys that I asked that said no, flat out. And that was disappointing, but I just kept on going. I kept trudging along, and I kept asking guys, and go for guys that you like. You know, they don't have to necessarily be popular. If you look at their work and go, man, this is cool, those are the guys that'll deliver some great stuff. I mean, I went for guys that were heroes of mine that aren't as popular as they were back in the day. The Alex Nino and the Ernie Chan and the Tony DeZuniga. Those guys were I mean, I revered back in the 70s and 80s, you know, when they were that Filipino wave of these great artists that came to Marvel at the time. And I was just like, I was enamored at the idea of getting them. And they're usually like Sure, whatever. What do you want? What do you want? What's the character's name? You know, they get right to the chase. They don't really want to know your life story. Those guys give your book a lot of dimensions, you know, to get different generations of creators. That was what I was after. I mean, I wanted Marie Severin, but I couldn't get her. I wanted Bruce Timm, and Bruce told me flat out, told me no. I wanted, you know, but I was happy. I mean, Bill Sienkiewicz, you know, he's a friend of mine, but I knew Bill was busy. So I had to ask him way before I knew I needed it, because I knew Bill's schedule was crazy. Steve Rude, I mean, perfect example. David Mack was a great, I mean, he was like, Sal, when do you need it? Straightforward. Michael Turner, the late Michael Turner, same way. He was like, Sal, I'm busy, but let me know when you need it. You know, and then lie. If you need it in July, I mean, if you need it by the fall, tell them you need it in July, you know, but give them a lot of leeway. You know, don't go up to them and say, I need it next month. Yeah. Because you're not going to get it. You know, if you know you got a project in the pipeline right now, start thinking about creators, or like, hey, you know, I really like this guy's style, or find creators that style fits your book too. They don't have to be big name guys. You know, I wanted David Finch. Finch was busy, so I'm going to ask him for the next one. I wanted Asad Ribic. Assad was busy. I wanted different, you know, but don't be afraid to be honest. Say, hey, God, I can afford this much. What can you do? You know, or it doesn't have to be fully painted, or maybe you do a pencils and I'll have it colored digitally, you know, or something. But that stuff is important. You know, don't be afraid. You're a creator. Ask other creators. You know?
I think that's fantastic advice for, like I said, I think a lot of our listeners, probably people who also are going to attempt to Kickstarter sometime in their future. It's going to happen. Why? Because we all want our voices out there selling our stuff. And to talk to someone who did it and is doing it successfully is fantastic. And I think it's great advice for our listeners. I did have just a couple more questions. The next one, since you did have this very successful Kickstarter with the Red Omnibus with Atomika, does that mean we're potentially going to see more Atomika? Is there any chance of more stories?
I don't know. I've already got some things in mind for Atomika. I'm going to see how this one goes. I love the character, obviously, but you know, sometimes you just think you should move on to a different project. Probably. I mean, I don't think I could ever not do. I mean, I had the USSA annual plotted out in my mind. So based on how well this is doing, yeah, I would definitely see more Atomika coming.
Good. So when does your Kickstarter end, so our listeners can pledge quickly?
Wednesday. Yeah, no, Wednesday. We're on our last 3 days, and it's like the last 3 days are when a lot of people like to jump on, because that's when they see where they're at. So there's a lot of stretch goals that have been unlocked. So at this point, if they jump on, or some, you know, I'm willing to support, I'm appreciative of every supporter. There's a lot of you know, freebies involved, perks involved, lithos and card sets and bookmarks and sticker packs and all this stuff that's, you know, and it's over a 300-page book. I mean, I just posted a video today on my Twitter and Instagram and Facebook pages I literally take you through the book. I flip through it and you could see the product. So you could see it from cover to cover. So it's not like just pictures of it. It's an actual video of it. Kind of give you an idea of, like, you know, you can kick the tires, so to speak, of it. And it turned out really nice.
I like I said, I would imagine so, because like I said, the original series was phenomenal. Your artwork is phenomenal. So you're welcome. And I encourage our listeners. Hopefully we do have the link on there. Pledge what you can to the book. It's going to end on Wednesday. And Mr. Abbinanti, thank you so much for talking with me. It's a great pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
It's definitely my pleasure, and I appreciate the advice for our future Kickstarter people and how to make a good one. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, thank you.
Bye.